Returning to the Eastern Han Dynasty, facing the indigenous people who were like tigers and wolves, Shisong could only pick up his butcher's knife, cut through thorns, and carve out a path of blood. For no other reason, he only wanted to see the sun of tomorrow. This is a chaotic era, and it is also an era of cannibalism. Only with strong support can he live better. He raised his butcher's knife and vowed to take advantage of the turbulent times with the courage of a single man. According to the desolate place, control the land of 9 counties. Seize the power of the king and wield the power of the world. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1 Soul returns to the Eastern Han Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On the highway in Country Z and City F, there is a large off-road vehicle speeding at high speed. The speed of the flying G has exceeded 210, and the speed is still increasing. The driver was a bald man, and at this moment, he lost his usual composure. What was particularly striking was the fine sweat rolling down the corner of his ear. He pushed his sunglasses with his hand and focused his gaze on the front, with a pair of thick and strong arms tightly gripping the steering wheel. His gaze under the sunglasses occasionally flickered and he looked at the nearby rearview mirror. In less than a second, his gaze was fixed on the front again. "Boss, there's a car behind us." The driver reminded me. "Get rid of them." The space in Big G is very large, with 4 armchairs at the back. A man in his 40s is lying on the chair, closing his eyes and recuperating. It's easy and difficult to get rid of other vehicles on the highway, but it's just a matter of speed. However, if the speed reaches a certain level, it's easy to overturn and cause accidents. There is also a man and a woman in the back seat, with a gentle face and golden glasses, typing and tapping on a notebook. The woman is tall and sexy, wearing professional attire, and a pair of slender black silk long legs are very attractive. These 2 people, one is a secretary and the other is a senior hacker, both of whom are subordinates of a man. The man is their boss, the Tiger Lord, who has the title of Underground King. Tiger Lord controls all the underground businesses, and in F City, it can be said that he can cover the sky and eat black and white. No matter who, they will sell some face. As the saying goes, there is no better way to walk by the river than to wet your shoes. When you walk at night, you will always encounter ghosts. If you can't do it clearly, you will come to the dark. Recently, Tiger Lord's underground business has been constantly suppressed by unknown forces, which has made him very frustrated. Therefore, he ended his vacation, got off the plane, and rushed to the headquarters. The road was smooth and peaceful, and I didn't expect a car to follow me at this moment, which made Tiger's eyebrows furrow slightly. During this time, it seems that his power has been targeted by jackals and wolves. He always wants to take a bite when you are not careful, which makes him puzzled. I don't know where he went wrong. Could he have offended some big shot? The speed was still soaring, and the palm holding the steering wheel was sweating profusely. The driver became nervous because the following car was biting and not letting go, which left him feeling uneasy. There is a rest stop 5 kilometers ahead, let's rest there and get rid of the tail at the back. The sexy secretary suddenly spoke at this moment, her voice ethereal like a clear spring, making it very comfortable to listen to. The gentleman typing on the keyboard glanced up at her slightly and helped her with his golden glasses. The secretary seemed to notice and gave a glance back, with a curved mouth that seemed to be sneering. "Okay, I'll let you solve it later. It's best to ask about the origin of this tale." Tiger replied. The secretary nodded and looked out the window. "So, have you found out yet?" Tiger sat up, took out a cigar and held it in his mouth, looking at the gentleman. Sven Nan stopped his slender hands and frowned. "I can't find it. The other person's password is very troublesome, but I believe as long as I have enough time, I can definitely crack their password program." "Can't even find out about you." Tiger Grandpa stared with disbelief and said, you are a top hacker in the world, and I'm a bit disappointed that you can't find out. Your annual salary doesn't seem to match your abilities. The refined man looked a bit embarrassed. With an annual salary of millions, he couldn't justify not being able to handle this matter well. He held up his golden glasses and said, "Please give me 2 days, Tiger Lord. I will definitely help you uncover the mastermind behind the scenes. 2 days is too long, at most 1 day, otherwise it will collapse." Tiger Lord's words are beyond doubt, giving him a final deadline. Okay. The cultured man shrugged helplessly and gave a bitter smile. During the conversation, a rest stop appeared ahead, and the vehicles slowly stopped in an orderly manner. The 4 people inside the car got off one after another, and Tiger Yi gestured with his eyes and walked towards the direction of the toilet. The vehicles following them also slowly stopped, and 3 people walked out of the car, all tall, tiger-backed, and bare-waisted. Their eyes signaled and they moved apart. In the restroom, the gentleman and the tiger stood together, booing, while the driver stood by the door. Perhaps in the afternoon, at this moment, the restroom was filled with only the 3 of them. When they come in, take them down and leave a living one. Tiger Lord took out the guy and let it go, saying to the gentleman, "Boss, don't worry, you are not unaware of Sister Chen's strength." The gentleman trembled and the guy trembled for a moment. Tiger Lord looked up and let out water, with a contented expression on his face. At this moment, the door of the toilet was pushed open and a figure flashed in. The contented tiger suddenly felt a tightness in his neck, and a heavy blow hit his waist, causing his head to uncontrollably hit the wall in front of him. "Don't move, otherwise you'll die now." A familiar voice sounded from behind. "You betrayed me." Tiger Lord had an incredulous expression on his face, and this voice was familiar to him the most. Tiger Lord laughed. "Rather than betraying, it's more like being an undercover agent. You have done too many heinous things and should receive the punishment you deserve. I believe you can only spend the rest of your life in prison." A cold female voice sounded, the door was pushed open, and several men in suits walked in. Originally, it was to invite the emperor into the urn. Tiger Lord glanced sideways and suddenly understood. With this in mind, he began to struggle hard. Unfortunately, his waist was injured and the wire around his neck was tightly pulled, giving him a suffocating feeling. A fierce aura suddenly appeared in Tiger Lord's eyes. It was better to fight hard than to have a glimmer of vitality. Unfortunately, in such a calculated and unintentional situation, any struggle was futile. In the end, his eyes rolled and he fainted from suffocation. Equals 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 Jiaozhou is located in a remote area with scarce resources and a sparse population. The population of the 9 counties under its jurisdiction is only 1 million. Canggu is the capital of Jiaozhou and can be considered as the most prosperous county city in Jiaozhou. The Han family divided the country into 13 states, and Jiaozhou was considered the most remote state, which was out of place with the bustling central plains. If it weren't for its markings on the map, it would have been forgotten. In such a remote place, it is rare for wealthy families and noble families to settle down here. As a result, this place is dominated by a family of scholars, making it a land emperor. The family of scholars should start with Shirsi. During the reign of Emperor Heng of Han, he was appointed as the prefect, and after Shirsi passed away, he was naturally inherited by Shirsi. It is only reasonable for his son to inherit his father's legacy. It can be said that this Shirsi was not an ordinary person. When he was young, he studied the left family spring and autumn annals with Lu Tao from Yingchuan. Later, he was elected as a filial and honest official, and was appointed as the Shangshu Lang. He was dismissed due to official duties. After his father Shi Xie passed away, Shi Xie was elected as the magistrate of Maokai and later promoted to the position of prefect. Jiaozhou is located in a remote area, thousands of miles away from the Central Plains. Emperor Heng of Han passed away, and Emperor Ling of Han succeeded him to the throne, which was Lu Hong. Jiaozhou was too remote, and Lu Hong was not a wise ruler. He also turned a blind eye and allowed Shi Shao to take charge of Jiaozhou. As long as he paid tribute every year, he would also take over and ignore it. Current affairs have changed, and the time has come to the first year of Zhongping, 180 years. The mansion of the scholar's family is huge, covering hundreds of acres. The buildings inside the mansion are luxurious, with hundreds of servants and maidservants, and 1,000 doormen. Shi Shao was nearly half a century old, and his descendants had 5 sons, namely, Hui, Ji, Gan, and Song. His eldest son, Hui, died of many illnesses and died early, while his third son died of a plague. He only left Hui, Gan, and Song as his eldest son, who was expected to inherit the family business. However, his fate was bitter and he passed away early, and the rest were all illegitimate, either from a concubine or from a drunken and promiscuous nature. Only Hui, who could barely calculate, was able to inherit the family business, but it was also from a concubine. However, there was no way, as his eldest son was gone, it was impossible to cut off his own family business. The inheritance of incense. In ancient times of feudalism, there were groups of wives and concubines, and the orthodoxy was particularly deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Those aristocratic families could only marry concubines through the side door but could not enter through the main door. The side door was also the back door. These wealthy families and noble families valued their appearance and style, and naturally had many rules, which were not as simple as those of ordinary people. The Shi family has been deeply rooted in Jiaozhou for nearly 100 years, firmly ranking as the largest ethnic group in Jiaozhou. Every year, various counties provide continuous offerings, like tribute. Shi Shao was nearly 50 years old, and in this era where he lived on average only half 100 years old, he was considered old. As his family grew, their descendants naturally had different thoughts. A few days ago, a few brothers of the Shi family went to the South China Sea for a trip, and the youngest son of the Shi family, Shisong, fell into the sea. After a fierce search by the servants, the person came up but turned into a corpse. A white-haired person giving a black-haired person away is a great tragedy in life. Although Shi has experienced it, he still shed tears. His palms and backs are all flesh, and although his status varies, blood dissolves in water. It is false not to be sad. Helpless, the whole city hung a white cloth and observed 3 days of silence. The scholar mansion is huge, divided into halls, residences, and several other courtyards. There are often guards patrolling the mansion, and rockery gardens stand tall. The largest house in the middle is occupied by the scholar, and there are also side rooms on the left and right for the gatekeepers. To ensure the safety of the nurse's residence, the scholar emblem and the scholar stem have already married and are living in other courtyards. Only the youngest son, Shisong, who just received the courtesy letter 2 years ago, is considered to have completed his coming-of-age ceremony and lives alone in a small courtyard on the last side, appearing somewhat pitiful and desolate. Shisong's face was pale, and he was over 7 feet tall. He was walking in the coffin in the main hall of the room, where servants and maids were burning paper money in front of the coffin, and there were faint cries coming from behind. At midnight, a gust of wind blew by, causing the white cloth in the hall to sway and paper dust to fly. A sinister and terrifying aura filled the room. Several servants and maids looked up, their faces changed, and their faces turned pale. Suddenly, a servant couldn't help but tremble and shouted, "Ghost!" They crawled out of the room. With this shout, coupled with the eerie wind, the ancient people were superstitious. The remaining few people couldn't stay and rushed out, shouting and running. In the blink of an eye, the building was empty, and there was only one coffin left in the main hall, with no figures left. There were many guards in the mansion, and it was night. The call was particularly loud, and with little effort, Shishong came upon him, followed by a group of guards. As Shishong was over 50 years old, he naturally had more courage. At this moment, he walked into another courtyard and saw the flying paper ash and swaying white cloth in the main hall. Subconsciously, his eyebrows furrowed, and he muttered to himself, "Is it because my son is dying with his eyes closed and his resentment persists?" Upon hearing the news, Hui and Shishong arrived and saw the scene in the hall. Their bodies trembled for a moment and they whispered, this. Let's go in and take a look." Shishong swung his sleeve and entered the main hall. Guards rushed in from behind, surrounding the coffins on both sides. They were carefully selected guards, and the characters who walked through the sea of swords and flames were naturally not afraid of a corpse. Shishong approached the coffin, with a strong guard and his own son by his side. He was not afraid, so he stretched out his neck and glanced inside the coffin. He found Shishong lying quietly inside the coffin, pale and devoid of blood, clearly dead for a long time. Suddenly, Shishong's arm in the coffin moved and waved forward. Fake a corpse, this action made Shi tremble with fear, and his hair burst open, causing him to take a step back in shock. The guards around hurriedly pulled out their swords and looked guarded. Shishong in the coffin let out a soft snort, opened his eyes, and sat up with both hands supporting the coffin. He glanced left and right and asked, "Where is this?" He squinted his eyes and moved for a moment, feeling a bit uncomfortable. "Song air." Shishong hesitated for a moment and asked a question. "What kind of song?" Tiger Lord looked around with a puzzled expression, only to find that they were all around him with a guarded face, still holding swords in their hands. He was puzzled and looked around carefully, muttering to himself, "Why are you here? Is it a detention center? The decorations here didn't look like it." He propped up his body with both hands and realized that there seemed to be a coffin beneath him. Did he travel through this unfamiliar place? He was momentarily puzzled, but cleared his mind and said, "I'm not dead yet, I just feel uncomfortable in my chest and can't breathe." At this moment, Shishong's soul was possessed, his body temperature increased, and his complexion improved, not as pale as before. Resurrection from death is naturally a good thing. Shi breathed a sigh of relief and said happily, "My son is destined to be blessed by heaven." Some people are happy, while others are worried. The badge behind him was secretly surprised. This kid is really lucky. If it were someone else, he would have died a long time ago. Is it true that, as my father said, this illegitimate kid really has the blessing of heaven? Otherwise, how could he possibly come back to life from death? I couldn't grasp it in my heart for a moment. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. South China Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shishong's resurrection from death brings joy and sorrow to some, but overall it is a good thing. Although Shishong doesn't treat his youngest son very much, now that he has come back to life, this white matter has become a joyful event, and his heart cannot help but breathe a sigh of relief. A few years ago, he experienced the sorrow of sending white hair to black-haired people, but he was a bit scared. Now that he is old, he always thinks about having a family full of children and grandchildren, and his illegitimate son is also a member of the aristocratic family, not caring if it is fake. Quickly, the maids and servants in the mansion became busy, removing the white cloth, carrying the coffin, flipping over and sprinkling water to clean, and the busyness didn't end until dawn. At the residence of the other courtyard, Shishong lay in bed with his eyes closed, unable to sleep. This was too bizarre. Even though he had been in society for many years, this was the first time he had seen such a thing happen to him, and it happened to him. However, thinking so much was useless. With a calm and contented attitude, he was contemplating his future plans. The remaining memories in his mind told him that he was the youngest in the family, ranked fifth, with 4 older brothers in front. Unfortunately, he lost his eldest and third brothers a few years ago, and now he has his second and fourth brothers. The Shi family is known as the local emperor in Jiaozhou, with 8 other counties in addition to Kangwu County. However, they are located in a remote area with a sparse population and living conditions that are even more difficult, and many places cannot even afford food and clothing. At this time, it was already dawn, and there were already busy figures of servants and maids in the mansion. Shi Songpan sat on the bed, rubbing his temples. His body felt a bit weak, and he muttered to himself that the body and bones of this young man from this family were weak. Looking at his small arms and legs, he probably couldn't withstand a fist from those peasant men. At this moment, a maid walked in with a tray in her hand, with bowls and chopsticks on top, steaming hot. The maid put down the tray, picked up the dishes and placed them on the nearby table, and whispered, "Young master, please have breakfast." During the Eastern Han Dynasty, there were 2 meals in the morning and evening, around 9 o'clock in the morning and around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Noon was not eaten. Shisong was new here. He didn't know the life habits of the people here, but he said it was time for breakfast. He was curious about the breakfast in this strange place. He looked up and found that there were several pieces of bread on the table beside the bed. One night, congee was a bowl of meat soup with meat flavor. He got out of bed, took a mouthful of meat soup, and felt fresh and delicious. He took a bite of the cake, which contained some meat foam and pickled Chinese cabbage beans. After several efforts, 2 cakes were eaten, and a bowl of meat soup also bottomed out. When he exhaled, he felt comfortable. At this moment, I looked up and saw the maid, who was only 15 or 16 years old, with a childish expression on her face that remained somewhat reserved, as if she had just entered the mansion. When I found myself looking at her, I quickly lowered my head and stood on the side, afraid to move around. In this era of strict hierarchy, these maids and servants who sell themselves to enter the mansion are like those captive pigs and dogs that are left to be slaughtered by the family owners. It is truly eye-catching, but fortunately, they can have a bite to eat and not starve to death. In this somewhat chaotic world, there are many people who change their children to eat and starve to death. It is also a kind of inexplicable luck for the lower class who can enter the threshold of the aristocratic family. After finishing his meal, Shisong picked up the handkerchief next to him and wiped the corners of his mouth. He looked at the maid and said, "Master, you're up." "Young master, the old master has already risen and is drinking tea in the guest hall." The maid lowered her head and whispered softly, "Okay, you go ahead." Shisong thought to himself that it was time to meet this family. The maid nodded and tidied up before slowly exiting the door. The mansion was huge, and if it weren't for any remaining memories, Shisong wouldn't have been able to find where this guest hall was for a while. There are 3 steps and 1 post in the mansion, with strict security. Along the way, flowers, plants, and trees can be seen everywhere. Some guards saw Shisong passing by and shouted to the young master, bowing their heads and not daring to look directly. It is unclear whether they were afraid or in awe, and the figures of several guards even trembled slightly. Shisong's heart murmured, "I don't eat people." As for fear, reverence. That's even more nonsense. Although he was a newcomer, the remaining memories told him that his predecessor had little status in the family, just an empty heirs with the identity of a young master. There is a guard standing in front of the lobby, looking straight at them, clearly trained and capable individuals. Xie sat high, with the badges and stems on both sides sitting on the side, accompanied by maidservants, making pastries and tea essential. At this moment, when Shisong came in, Xie, who was on his head, quickly waved and said, "My son is safe, and I feel at ease as a father. Please sit down first and have something to say to you. I have met 2 older brothers, father. Shisong was a bit unfamiliar, so he reluctantly raised his hand and arched, which could be considered as having seen the ceremony before. The coat of arms is tall and strong, with a strong and powerful appearance. The scholar is dressed as a scholar, with a humble face. The lobby is decorated with luxury, and some tables and chairs are made of precious wood, making it a place to welcome and entertain guests. As Shisong sat down, Shixia scanned his 3 sons and said, "My father is already old and powerless. Some things should also be entrusted to you younger generations. First, let's hone them well, and second, make plans for the future. As you may know, Jiaozhou has fewer small people and is easy to manage. However, even if the area is small and the population is small, it still needs to be managed by people, otherwise it is easy to cause trouble in life. Jiaozhou originally had 9 counties, except for the other counties that were governed by your uncle. There are now 3 counties in Nanhai, Zhuya, and Guilin that need to be governed by people. You can choose where you want to go." Shi Hui's eyes turned and he spoke first, "My child is willing to go to Guilin." Shigan sighed in his heart and said, "My child is willing to go to Zhuya." Shisong was puzzled and didn't know how powerful it was, so he said, "Then I'll go to the South China Sea." Shi Hui nodded and waved his hand, saying, "That's all right. Tomorrow, go to the mansion and choose 300 guards to accompany you. Be careful not to take good care of yourself when you arrive. Guilin has extremely beautiful mountains and rivers, making it a great place to play. Coupled with its vast land and sparse population of only 10,000 people, it is easy to manage." Therefore, Shi Hui led the selection of this place first. Zhuya comes second, with countless mountains and forests, and difficult roads. Compared to Guilin, it is definitely much worse. As for the South China Sea, coastal towns were originally a good place, with endless sea fish and seafood, as well as the advantage of sea salt, a lucrative specialty. However, this place often has pirates lurking around. If they were to go to the South China Sea to govern, they would inevitably go to war. Therefore, the 2 brothers skipped the South China Sea and chose the other 2. Shisong naturally didn't know about these things, so he could only assume and follow the arrangements of this cheap old man. The 3 brothers left the guest hall and walked on the small path in the mansion. It was early summer, with rising temperatures and blooming flowers and plants. The small courtyard in the mansion had a unique scenery. In a tea pavilion, there was a maid placing tea snacks. The 3 brothers walked into it and knelt down. Shisong was not used to kneeling and sat cross-legged. On the coffee table, there were some snacks and fruit pulp, and the 3 brothers chatted while tasting. Shi Hui's eyes flickered for a moment, and after thinking for a while, he couldn't help but ask, "Brother Song is fine. I feel a lot of peace for you. I wonder if Brother Song remembers how he stumbled and fell into the sea that day." Stumbling. Shisong took a sip of tea and felt a refreshing aroma in his mouth. He thought about it for a while and shook his head, saying, "I can't remember." Shi Hui didn't give up and asked, "I don't remember at all." "I can't remember." Shisong shook his head. Shi Hui stared closely at Shisong. Seeing that his face was calm and without any trace of his thoughts, he could only suppress his suspicion. The nearby Shigan smiled and said, "The matter has passed. Fortunately, 5th brother is fine. Tomorrow we will be separated. Here, I wish us all the best in our journey. Everything goes smoothly." Shi Hui reluctantly picked up a teacup and took a sip. Shisong is a bit inexplicable. Is there any hidden truth behind his mistake? He is also considered an old and sophisticated person. Seeing how much his cheap brother cares about him, there must be some tricks involved. However, as an unfamiliar person, he cannot speak up at this time. The lower the profile, the better. When he has enough voice, the doubts in his heart will be easily resolved. 3 seemingly half-brothers, of the same father and half-mother, usually speak very little. Today, they also gathered together under the pretext of taking office, but over time, they became dull and tasteless. After drinking some tea, they each dispersed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Appointment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiaozhou is a very special place, with difficult roads, remote location, and sparse population. It is the most remote state among the 13 states of the Great Han Dynasty, with a level of prosperity that cannot compare to any other state, even some counties and cities in the Central Plains. However, it is located in a good position, adjacent to Yangzhou, Jingzhou, and Yizhou. As long as you cross the mountains, forests, and rivers, you can directly enter the hinterland of these states and counties. The South China Sea is a coastal town adjacent to Yangzhou, Guiyang, Lujiang, and other places, and they are only separated by a river and sea. If they were placed today, it would not be a problem, just take a boat to cross the river. However, in the Eastern Han Dynasty, with backward technology and huge waves in the river and sea, ordinary ships could not withstand the power of nature. The sea has no boundaries. In addition to climate change, there are also some pirates who live on the edge of the knife. These are often the masters who kill without blinking an eye. When encountering ships, there is no reason to let them go. They either spend money to extinguish the disaster or sink into the sea, and there is no third way to go. He had a deep understanding of the moral character and knowledge of Shi Xie's 3 sons, but governing the county was still the first time. He had a tested mentality and planned to inherit the family business in the future. Therefore, he asked his 3 sons to choose a place to help him manage the county below and see who had stronger abilities. The mountains are high and the emperor is far away. Appointments do not require the consent of the court, just a word from his advisor and an appointment letter. This is also the advantage of being located in a remote area, which is like being a local emperor. In the early morning, outside the taxi hall, it was bustling with traffic and crowds. Many people in the same attire stood together, wearing swords and looking indifferent. The people in the city watched some good things along the way. The news of Shisong's resurrection from death could not be hidden for long, and the whole process was already known to the people. Throughout history, people have a habit of gossiping, and if there is any wind or grass moving between neighbors, it is inevitable that they will talk about it with great enthusiasm. As it spreads, it becomes more and more mysterious. In ancient times, it was a bit troublesome to wear a pair of underwear, an outer robe, a belt accessory, and so on. There was also a habit of keeping hair, and long hair naturally needed to be combed. Shisong, with the mentality of settling in as soon as you come, gradually adapted to this lifestyle habit. There were also some ways in which the ancient spoke, but he couldn't accept one thing. It was like wearing empty clothes all day, and a slight gust of wind made him feel chilly. Xiaocui is his personal maid who takes care of his daily life. When going to the South China Sea, she naturally has to take her with her. For Xiaocui, who has not traveled far, she seems a bit excited. She woke up early, tidied up her belongings, checked inside and out several times, and only then did she ask the young master to dress and wash. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, there was no toothbrush, and people used salt, tea, vinegar, and other substances for washing and rinsing. Generally, people used coarse salt or salt powder, applied it to their teeth, and rinsed their mouths. As for cleanliness and hygiene issues, it is unknown. Even if you have a toothbrush, you may not have cavities or bad breath. Shisong adapted to it for 2 days, and Xiaocui held a copper basin with a clean towel hanging beside it and a wooden jar containing salt powder. For Shisong, this type of salt powder was light yellow and had some way out compared to the salt he knew, but he didn't think about it carefully. In this era, using salt is considered a wealthy family because the government controls the salt route, and the price is naturally high. However, there are several counties in Jiaozhou near the sea, so producing some coarse salt is not a problem. Salt may be a rare commodity outside, but it is very common here, which is also a geographical advantage and one of the specialties. Having used breakfast, he bid farewell to Shi Shao and boarded a carriage to start his journey to the South China Sea for about 2 days. The weather in Jiaozhou was hot and humid, and there were many tropical rainforests, so the road was rugged and difficult to navigate. Those who were not familiar with the road may even take the wrong direction. Fortunately, Shi Shao has also used some manpower and material resources over the years to carve out an official road. Along the way, there were many passers-by passing by on both sides of the road. In the past, there was no time to appreciate the scenery of this era. At this time, when I was idle, my mind and body relaxed, and the scenery outside was particularly beautiful. When it came to what era it was, Shisong also asked Xiao Chui, saying that it was the Han family's world. He was familiar and unfamiliar with the Han Dynasty, and the most famous ones were naturally the rule of literature and scenery, Emperor Wu of Han, and so on. However, he did not know much about it. In his past life, he had been involved in some business intrigues in society for many years, but he did not care much about history. The leading guard this time is a medium-sized Han named Su Minggao, riding a short-legged horse at the front of the team. The South Boat and the North Horse are in Jiaozhou, which is located in a remote area. Horse merchants naturally do not come here to do business. All the horses of the wealthy children in Jiaozhou are purchased from places such as Yangzhou and Jingzhou, and each horse costs a lot of money to buy, which shows how precious and rare it is. To put it harshly, people are not as precious as horses. The aristocratic family is an absolute symbol of power in Jiaozhou, and ordinary horses are naturally easy to catch. After years of breeding, there are also thousands of horses, but most of them are short-legged horses, only 5 or 6 feet high, which is not much worse than the 7 or 8 foot tall horses in the Central Plains. Fortunately, these horses are hard-working, patient, and easy to handle, and are also deeply loved by people in Jiaozhou. 2 days later, the 300-strong army led by Shisong finally arrived at Xinjiang County, the capital of the South China Sea. The county was not large and had a population of about 5,000. After 2 days of dining and drinking, the group finally breathed a sigh of relief. During the day, the sun was fierce and the weather was scorching hot, and in the middle of the night, the cold forced the dew to be extremely heavy. If not careful, one would feel it. For people in this era, catching a cold is also fatal, commonly known as wind cold. Most of the county magistrates in Jiaozhou were vacant due to a shortage of manpower, and this was the case all year round. Only one county magistrate and lieutenant were appointed, just like the later secretaries and police chiefs. On this day, the county magistrate and lieutenant of Xinjiang County waited outside the city early, accompanied by dozens of captains. Even in the scorching weather, they patiently waited silently. At this moment, a black shadow appeared in the distance, moving slowly from far to near. Obviously, it was a team of people waiting for it. The waiting team was in a commotion, and their efforts paid off. Finally, they were looking forward to it. They were full of energy, tidying up their clothes and preparing to welcome them. I pay my respects to the county magistrate. As the team approached, the county magistrate led a group of people to slowly bow down. Shisong got off the carriage and approached, reaching out to help the two of them. He said, "You two have worked hard, don't be too polite. Let's talk about it when we enter the city." As early as on the road, Shisong had read the appointment letter. Rather than being an appointment letter, it was more like a detailed introduction to some of the characters in various counties in the South China Sea. Xinjiang County is the place of the South China Sea, and he was familiar with some of the characters and aristocratic families, such as the county magistrate and the county captain in front of him. The county magistrate used to come from a noble family background, but later his family declined and he moved to settle in the South China Sea. It was normal for the noble family to be able to read and write. The job he later pursued was also based on his previous education. In this era, mud-legged people did not have the money or qualifications to study. They lived just to have enough to eat. The county magistrate is the younger brother of the Li family in the city. He had practiced several martial arts skills in the early years and was able to secure a position as a county magistrate thanks to his family's connections. The Li family is engaged in the sea salt business and is a well-known and prestigious family in Xinjiang County, making him the richest person in the world. The three of them walked forward, and the county magistrate and the county captain were one step behind Shisong to show respect. Shisong did not notice this kind of detail, nor did he know why they were waiting for him here in advance. He wanted to get some news, but he thought to himself without asking in detail. At this moment, the county magistrate hesitated for a moment and said, "A few days ago, I went out to the countryside to inspect. I didn't know that the county magistrate died in Xinjiang, but fortunately, with the protection of heaven, the woman who fell into the water has been investigated by the magistrate. Yesterday, her uncle came to the mansion to thank the county magistrate for saving his life. Women falling into the water. Didn't my cheap brother say he made a mistake? Is there another hidden truth behind this?" Shisong was a bit shocked for a moment. Originally, the matter had passed and he didn't ask in detail. He thought it was his group of people who went to play and fell into the sea and died. At this moment, he suddenly heard the county magistrate's words. This matter is not as simple as he imagined, and there must be some tricks involved. Since he has arrived, this matter must be investigated. However, now is not the time to say these things. He extended his hand and begged, "It's a bit tiring on the way, let's go back to the city first. The day will be long." "Your Excellency is right. I have not considered it carefully, please." The county magistrate wiped the corners of his head with fine sweat and cursed inwardly that the weather was extremely hot. In just a short while, his back was soaked through. Xinjiang County is located by the seaside and is well connected in all directions. There are no formal shops in the city, most of which are street vendors. Occasionally, there is a small shop that looks a bit upscale, and the main road in the middle is also interesting. Unlike those county towns where bricks and stones are used for paving, which are specialty pebbles from the seaside. These pebbles are large and small but have not been polished, and the casual paving makes it very interesting for people to walk on them. In coastal cities, most of the goods sold are seafood, and occasionally you can see some small mountain animals. At this time, as the sun passes by and there are not many pedestrians on the streets, Shisong and his companions pass by the streets, causing a considerable sensation. After all, with the accompaniment of the county magistrate and county lieutenant, some passers-by speculate where the big shot came from, or where the young master of a certain family went on a trip and had fun. The county government here cannot be compared with Kangwu's, and its scale has become much smaller, with only one front hall and backyard. In addition, there are some warehouses and other rooms, and even the servants' houses are only one or two, which looks a bit shabby. Shisong entered the front hall and sat on the main seat, watching the few people standing below. A surge of enthusiasm erupted, and I was in charge of my territory. This could also be considered a benefit of coming to this world. However, he knew that in order to secure his position, cultivating his own power was inevitable and the top priority. He had to attract a few of his loyal subordinates. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Li Mansion. You are listening at novel full.audio. Xinjiang County is a small county town, which naturally cannot compare to counties like Kangwu. The environment is also unsatisfactory, but fortunately, there is not so much control over personal freedom. As the saying goes, when the sky is high, birds can fly and the sea is wide, fish can leap. Leaving Kangwu, whether it is right or wrong, at least there is no need to live under the noses of others. Although they are relatives, they are not familiar with each other, which makes it difficult for Shisong to be an outsider. The environment in the small county town is naturally worse, and the houses are a bit outdated. However, after cleaning them up, they have a look of a home. Although Xiaotsue is young, she is agile and has several maidservants, which naturally makes the efficiency much faster. She can move into a new house before nightfall. There is no need to worry about the 300 guards. Someone had already led Su Gao to arrange their residence, and these people are considered as Shisong's family, all of whom need to provide good food and drink. In case of any accidents, there will be more manipulative people around him, which makes him inexplicably think of the group of little brothers who were around him when he used to socialize. Li was one of the top billionaires in Xinjiang County, rumored to be worth billions and could rival the country. As a county captain, he naturally rose in popularity and would sell some face to anyone in the county. The fifth son of the governor of Jiaozhou came here to take office, and they were naturally the first to receive news. The head of the Li family dared not neglect him and wanted to be the first to invite Shisong into the mansion to give a good impression. As a result, the Li family was busy for a while, with delicacies from mountains and seas, and a large amount of fish and meat being sent into the mansion. The servants of the Li family were busy, and there were always figures of them shuttling in and out through the back door. The Li family was also afraid that the food cooked by the kitchen in the mansion would not suit their taste, so they went to find a few slightly famous chefs to sit down. The places that needed to be cleaned in the mansion were all wiped clean and bright, refreshed, just like during the Chinese New Year. The head of the Li family, Li Sun, had a good reputation, and their family had been living in Jiaozhou for nearly 100 years. They relied on sea salt monopoly business, and even set up some convoys to open their doors. The land of Jingchu has started trading. The Li family's current situation can be said to have given Shisong face, but it also shows their attitude of wanting to win him over and continue living a life of striving for wealth day by day. After all, they are the son of the prefect, and it is best to win him over. It is also easy to take care of anything. Although Li Sun had a wealthy family, he had very few children. Over the years, he had taken in countless concubines, but eventually did not improve. This was also a concern for him. However, this kind of thing cannot be disclosed to others, it can only rot in his stomach. Fortunately, a few years ago, a man gave birth to a concubine, which made him overjoyed and named him An, symbolizing peace and tranquility. The Li family naturally had to hold a grand banquet to celebrate the occasion. It is said that the city was overcrowded with people, and thousands of tables were set up for the banquet alone, which can be said to be wealthy and wealthy. Night falls and the moonlight rises. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, some common people couldn't even afford oil lamps, and most of them would go to bed and rest when it was dark. As a result, some families with sufficient energy had a lot of offspring, and with more offspring, their food supply naturally increased. From generation to generation, if it weren't for doing business, the living conditions of ordinary people would naturally decline significantly, and some even sold their children to support their families. In this era, there was no industry, and most of them were unemployed vagrants who either went hunting in the mountains or cut wood to sell in county towns. They only had a few months to grow crops, so most of them were idle and busy in their spare time. As a result, there were a lot of mountain bandits, and pirates. They either howled in the mountains and forests or rode the wind and waves, and there were countless such people. Even during the reign of Emperor Wenjing, these people often appeared to plunder the countryside and kill past merchants. When both sides met, it was inevitable to be polite, and it was also inevitable to report that they knew each other. In the future, living here to make a living, Shisong couldn't help but compliment him a few times. He was a newcomer and quite smooth, and this performance immediately changed in the eyes of Li Cheng and others. He was young, smooth, and easy to get along with. Therefore, the conversation and understanding between the two sides were very pleasant. After some conversation, it was discovered that the county magistrate, named Li Cheng with the courtesy name Dexing, was the younger brother of the Li family. However, the county magistrate was from a foreign land, named Buhua with the courtesy name Zichu. He was originally from the Chu region. A few years ago, Buhua, who had received his coming-of-age ceremony, went on a trip and eventually settled in Xinjiang County. He mentioned that there were still some ethnic people living there in the Chu region who had written to come and live together, but some of them complained that the weather here was harsh and far less comfortable than the Chu region. In the end, this matter came to an end. The two sides talked for a while again, and Li Cheng invited him to visit the mansion when he saw the sky was getting dark. Shisong naturally had no reason to refuse and responded repeatedly. There were servants cleaning the residence, so he didn't have to worry. He was also a cheerful person, so he called Su Gao and followed him to the Li mansion as a guest. To survive in this unfamiliar world, it is inevitable to form cliques and seek out people who are loyal to oneself. In order to win over Su Gao, we also invite him to go with us. To put it bluntly, he is a guard, but to put it bluntly, he is just a servant. Being able to attend such a grand banquet also moved Su Gao deeply. The ancient people valued loyalty, which made Su Gao have a much better impression of this son of the governor. A few people rode in a carriage and soon arrived at a huge mansion gate. They saw a pair of stone lions waving their teeth and claws in front of the gate, which was majestic. The vermilion-painted gate was hung high with red lanterns, and there were family guards guarding the door. It was obvious that they were not ordinary people. Walking into the gate, there were bluestone paving roads, and along the way, there were also some stone lamps standing on both sides, illuminating the mansion like daylight. Shisong walked around and was secretly surprised. Good guy, this scale is almost as big as his own. The ancient aristocratic families are indeed worth a lot of money. Along the way, he was amazed. Occasionally, people passing by on the road would salute Li Cheng. Judging from their attire, it was obvious that they were the role of family guards, and there were many patrol teams, with a faint presence of thousands of people. Li Sun had already been waiting in front of the hall. When he saw them coming, he was busy bowing and saying, "Sir, being able to come to the mansion really makes my humble abode shine. Please come quickly." Shisong's face twitched as he realized that your place was a humble abode, so my place of residence was a pigsty. He also reached out and politely said, "Please, Master Li, please." Entering the hall, some people had already taken their seats, obviously from their clan and some wealthy businessmen from the city. They couldn't help but stand up and greet each other one by one. Li Sun signaled to his younger brother, who understood and quickly reached out his hand, saying, "Sir, please take your seat. You don't need to be polite." Shisong secretly said, "You also said that when I first arrived, how could I sit in the main seat?" He understood this rule and quickly declined, saying, No, I can just sit anywhere I want." "Lieutenant Li, you don't need to be polite." At this moment, Li Sun answered with a smile on his face and hurriedly said, "Please take a seat over here, young master." Li Sun asked Shisong to sit in the lower left corner of the main seat, with the ancient people's left hand being the highest. This sitting method is also a form of respect, and Shisong does not understand this. As long as it is not the main seat, it is okay. He did not refuse and sat cross-legged, leaning against the table with one hand. The people in the hall did not blame him for not sitting properly, only saying that the young master's body was weak and tired from the 2-day journey. Soon, servants came in one after another, holding plates with some delicacies on them, which inevitably made people produce saliva, such as braised bear paws, roasted whole lamb, etc., and some sea creatures, most of which were unknown. It was strange to see a taxi singing. After 3 rounds of drinking and 5 flavors of dishes, everyone in the hall was drinking with red faces and blurred eyes. At this moment, a group of dancers entered. Jiaozhou is located in the southern part of Guangdong and Guangxi provinces today, with hot and humid weather and short sleeves in winter. This is also true of jiaozhou in ancient times. Therefore, these dancers are dressed in revealing clothes, with only a thin layer of green silk on their bodies. The scenery inside can be vaguely seen, and with the stimulation of alcohol, everyone in the hall is mesmerized by it. Li Sun, who was in the main position, secretly observed that he was nearly 40 years old and shrewd, and had a very malicious eye. Otherwise, the Li family would not have developed to the current position of the richest person in the county. He saw that Shisong was staring at the dancer closely, no different from some people in the hall, and he already had a plan in his heart. As long as he was a man, there was nothing bad about him. As long as you were lustful, there was a way to pull you onto the ship. He had an idea in his heart. The dancer was dancing gracefully in the hall, some of whom were bold and had already shown affection, causing some young people with poor theorems to have uncontrollable impulses. Although Shisong was also a young person, he had never seen anything in the world before. For him, these were still childish, just a curiosity for the first time, and he was just a little fascinated by them. In ancient times, the fate of a dancer was bitter, like that of a courtesan or a prostitute. To get rid of her bad reputation, it was all about selling goods to good families. Of course, people were not goods, but in this era, they were no different from goods. Some aristocratic families, in order to win over others, would more or less give away some dancers and concubines. It can be seen that the low status of women is like buying and selling goods, unlike modern women who can be the masters of the family and cover up the sky. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Desire to achieve things. You are listening at novel full.audio. At dawn, the sky brightened slightly. I had a hangover all night, my head was dizzy, and there was a slight pain. Shisong lifted the blanket and sat on the bed. In early summer, the weather in jiaozhou was already very stuffy, and at night, a thin blanket was laid on a cool mat. Even so, the room seemed a bit stuffy without air conditioning. He was used to living in high-rise buildings and was indeed not used to it. Mosquitoes chased several times at night alone, as if the incense in the small cauldron inside the house had little effect. The room was clean and tidy, with no dust visible. It was clearly Xiaocui's fault. He got out of bed, sat at the table, picked up the teapot on top, and poured a cup. The tea tasted fragrant and there was still some warmth left. It was probably freshly brewed, and he secretly said to Xiaocui that she was hardworking and considerate. He put on a coat, pushed open the door, and a fresh breath of air sucked into his lungs. The discomfort of yesterday's hangover seemed to be swept away. The fragrance of flowers and plants in the morning, and the warm light shining on his body were indescribably comfortable. A new day had begun, and what should I do today, he thought to himself. The cook in the mansion got up very early and had already prepared breakfast. Xiaocui's figure appeared at the corner, holding a tray in her hand with a smile on her face. Obviously, she was in a happy mood. When she saw that the young master had already gotten up, she quickly quickened her pace and heard a voice coming from her mouth, saying, "The morning food is already done." The young master came to taste it, and it doesn't taste good. There was a guard in the yard. He moved the table and futon to a good place to put it down. Xiaocui moved slowly and put the prepared breakfast on it. Shisong looked at it, but it was porridge. He didn't know what it was made of. He took a spoon and gave it a mouthful, but it was a little light. Seeing a pottery jar steaming hot next to him, he pointed and asked, "What's inside this?" Xiaocui was busy explaining, saying, "My son had a hangover last night, and porridge warmed his stomach. This pottery pot is made of babao seafood, which is one of the characteristics of this county." Features. Shisong was interested. The porridge was light, and it really had a warm stomach effect in the morning. He felt that this little girl was considerate. If she was around today, there would be a lot of men pursuing her. This babeo seafood was the first time he had heard of it. He opened the lid of the jar, and a different aroma came to his nose, and his appetite was immediately aroused. He made a big bowl full of food and clothing by himself, and found some seafood in it, such as crab meat, shrimp, sea cucumber, and so on. There were a few that he didn't know and couldn't tell what kind of seafood it was. He eagerly picked up the bowl and took a spoonful, closed his eyes and savored it for a while, nibbling slowly, feeling that the meat was delicious and chewy. The soup was also fresh and sweet, and he wolfed it down. The full bowl was already bottomed out. Delicious, rare delicacy. Shisong drank the last bit of soup, exhaled a sigh of satisfaction, and then said to Xiaocui, "This 8-treasure seafood dish is done well. Give the chef 50 yuan as a reward." Xiaocui took Chen Paochu to thank the young master. The crescent-shaped smile on Xiaocui's side slightly blessed her body. "Divide the rest among you." Xiaocui nodded happily and secretly said that the young master had woken up like a different person, as if he had become much more friendly. If it were in the past, it would be something she couldn't even think of. Her heart was sweet, and she smiled and took a bowl and chopsticks. The guard next to him swallowed his saliva and asked with uncertainty, "Young master, do we also have a share?" "That's right." Shisong nodded, the former looking excited and turned to run towards the kitchen. Su Gao sat with Shisong last night, drinking without hesitation. Like Shisong, he had a hangover all night and got up late today. He couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. As soon as he entered the mansion, he saw Shisong sitting in a small courtyard, as if he was eating. He quickly tidied up his clothes, walked closer, and clasped his fists, saying, "Su Gao is here to meet the county magistrate." "Oh, you're here. I happen to have something to tell you." Su Gao felt inexplicably nervous in his heart, thinking that he was going to blame himself for sleeping too much. He quickly respectfully said, "If you have any instructions, please feel free to let me know." Shisong moved his position and faced him, saying, "Would you be willing to serve as a general?" Su Gao was taken aback upon hearing this. "What's wrong? I don't have confidence." Shisong felt uneasy when he didn't say anything. If he didn't agree, he wouldn't be able to find a suitable person for a while. After all, the person in front of him had taught those guards in the mansion for some years, and he definitely had experience in training soldiers. As long as he strictly prohibited them and obeyed orders, he would be fine. Could it be that the young master didn't know that private soldiers could not be recruited and trained as soldiers in the city? Su Gao looked at him with some surprise. "And this rule?" Shisong couldn't believe it, but then he thought to himself that he had just arrived a few days ago, and perhaps it was really possible. He quickly asked, "Is this the rule set by the court?" Su Gao shook his head and said slowly, "This is not a rule set by the court, but by the master. Noble families cannot have more than 1,000 disciples, and each county seat only arranges captains and county officials. Due to the remote location of Jiaozhou, some places do not even have county officials, and it is all controlled by some aristocratic families." "I see." Shisong is somewhat puzzled. In Jiaozhou, the Shi family has become so powerful that they have established their own rules and do not need to report to the court. And each county cannot recruit soldiers, so what if there are bandits and pirates? Does it mean that encountering these ruthless characters who kill without blinking an eye, one should be slaughtered by others? This made him a bit incredulous. However, on the other hand, whether this new resident believes it or not, the fact here in Jiaozhou is that the mountains are high and the emperor is far away. Jiaozhou is too remote, and if you don't pay close attention, no one will notice it. It is a place where birds don't defecate, and in any way, it cannot be compared to other places. It can be said that it is a despised existence. Jiaozhou is at the very edge of the entire territory of the great Han Dynasty, and there is no such thing as it. However, this is not the main reason. The key is still the person named Shi Shao, who is very intelligent. Other provinces and counties not only offer tribute every year, but at least the quality and quantity are much worse than Jiaozhou. Jiaozhou can be described as a poor and remote place with nothing valuable, but it is also rich in agate, amber, crystal, and night pearls, which wealthy people love to collect. Shi Shao likes to pay tribute every year. These things may not be of much use to the people here in Jiaozhou, but for the wealthy people in the Central Plains, they are treasures. If you take northern horses to sell in the south, you can naturally sell them for a good price. This is easy to understand. Rare things are precious, and the gemstones produced in Jiaozhou are not uncommon when you see them many times. In the blink of an eye, they become popular in those places in the Central Plains. Taking advantage of this, Shi pays tribute to the court every year, reporting good news without worrying. Everything is resolved privately, and with the bribery of some officials, these small actions become insignificant. Over time, the court does not care about anything else, as long as it pays tribute every year. In addition, Jiaozhou is known for its poor weather, and no one in the imperial court is willing to take office in such a place. Shi volunteered to take office, which is undoubtedly pleasing. Without causing trouble for the imperial court, even a slight use of power to handle personal matters is understandable. The imperial court turned a blind eye and ignored him. In the emperor's heart, as long as there were many tribute items, everything was easy to say. As a result, it was believed for a long time that the situation had become a never-ending one, and in Jiaozhou, the words of the scholar were more effective than those of the court. Shisong is an outsider who is not very clear about some things here. It's not surprising that he was arranged to take office in a few days. Some things are still unclear, and he was puzzled. He quickly asked, "The security in the city is good, as long as there are captains to capture them. What if we encounter those mountain bandits and pirates? We can only let them slaughter us." Su Gao let out a sigh in his heart. Indeed, these aristocratic young masters had already taken office and asked such questions, but he could only patiently explain, "There are no bandits near the sea in Nanhai County, but there are still pirates. But don't worry about them. The bandits seek wealth, as long as you give them some money, this matter will be over. Moreover, even if the county recruits soldiers, it is difficult to defeat the pirates. After all, new soldiers who have not been to the battlefield are not opponents of pirates. They have always given some money to settle the matter. So it's like this, spending money to alleviate disasters." He thought about it for a while before saying, "If I write a letter and my father agrees, can we recruit and train soldiers?" Su Gao didn't expect him to be so determined to recruit and train soldiers. He nodded uncertain and said, "If the young master were to study, maybe this could be done." Shisong made a decision, and he made it a decision. Firstly, he wanted to operate this place as his own headquarters. Secondly, he wanted to swallow the 300 guards of his cheap father. Thirdly, he had a group of young men following him, making it easier to handle things. After all, this unfamiliar place did not know what dynasty it was. Although it was the Han Dynasty, he was not a historian. His eyes were darkened. With hundreds of years of history in the Han Dynasty, he didn't know which year it was now. He still relied on himself to be at ease. He had cards in his hand to be at ease. As the saying goes, if you want to succeed, you must have a sharp weapon. Xiushu, who couldn't write on his own, had to let others take care of him. So, he thought of Buhua and quickly asked the guards to invite the county magistrate Buhua over. Buhua is a civil servant, and his handwriting is not unsightly. If he wants to achieve great things, military force is one aspect, and civil servants naturally cannot be omitted. Buhua naturally needs to be well recruited. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Essential Tools. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the middle of the day, the temperature rises and starts to feel a bit stuffy. Shisong asked Su Gao to enter the house, and Xiao Chui went to brew a pot of tea and then left the door. The two sat down and started chatting to pass the time. However, Shisong urgently needed indigenous people like Su Gao to enrich and broaden his horizons. First of all, it was the daily lives of the people. In this era, the people were really suffering. In addition to some rent taxes, there were also household taxes, oral taxes, calculation taxes, additional taxes, contribution taxes, and other miscellaneous taxes. In Shisong's words, it was inhumane, and even the grass feed used by the imperial army and horses had to be paid for by the people. This kind of thing, there is no place to reason, and one can only break their teeth and swallow them in their stomach, which is like killing a person. In this era, the cost of grain collection is average, and with these taxes, they can't survive and can only go to wealthy households to become tenants to earn some food. In addition to taxation, natural disasters are also quite terrifying. Earthquakes, droughts, floods, and epidemics take turns, and the most terrifying is the plague. In this era, medical technology is backward, and prevention work is even worse. If you don't pay attention, a village or a city will have no people or livestock left. As the lowest level of the people, you can only watch your loved ones leave and slowly die in pain. According to incomplete statistics, during the Eastern Han Dynasty, the plague alone took the lives of millions of people. It is truly a terrifying scene where there are frozen bones on the road and no human habitation for thousands of miles. As Shisong listened, he asked. From the initial shock to the final indifference, he had never seen it with his own eyes and did not know the terrifying scene. As a county magistrate, he should do something for these people, whether it is to benefit the local people or to eliminate violence and ensure peace. In short, since life has come, it cannot be unknown. He made up his mind that the matter of becoming an army has been firmly established. Even if his father disagrees, he will secretly recruit and train soldiers. After all, under absolute force, everything will become easy. I am the knife, you are the fish, it is so simple. But this matter cannot be urgent, it needs to be considered in the long run. After all, I have no reliance at the moment, and I need to consider everything carefully and have a reliable constitution. The two of them were talking, and time passed quickly without realizing it. A guard reported that the county magistrate Bourgeois was waiting outside the door. Shisong ordered the guard to invite him in. Bourgeois entered the room and bowed to Shisong, then gestured slightly to Su Gao, saying, "Your Excellency, please come over. I don't know what's important." Shisong gestured for him to sit down and speak, while Bourgeois sat still. Su Gao quickly poured him a cup of tea, and Bourgeois thanked him. Shisong then spoke up, "Although we have only met twice, we have become friends at first sight. There is something I need to trouble you, sir." Shisong spoke politely, without the appearance of his superiors ordering his subordinates to do things, and using the term, sir, to refer to himself immediately increased Bourgeois' liking. As Shisong said, the two would only meet twice. It seemed that the young master of the prefect's family was different from others, and he didn't know the truth at first sight. However, his demeanor was impeccable. Bourgeois said, "If you have anything to do, please let me know and I will do my best." Shisong took a sip of tea and said without blushing or jumping, "Please help me write a letter to my family, sir." Bourgeois felt strange in his heart. "You can write this letter yourself. How could you ask me to take care of it?" He had doubts in his heart and said, "Your Excellency, it's because it's inconvenient that I let you take care of it. Sir, he is a scholar with beautiful handwriting and gorgeous language. I can't compare him to anyone else. Could you please take care of him?" Shisong had a thick skin and was not embarrassed. He thought to himself, "Why do you have to take care of me even though I know how to write?" Of course, he couldn't say this to Death, he could only rot in his stomach. The flattery was pleasant to listen to, and writing a family letter was not a big deal. Bourgeois reluctantly agreed, and Shisong was overjoyed. He quickly asked Xiao Chui to bring a paper, ink, and inkstone. After Xiao Chui put down the paper, she found that it was somewhat yellowish and rough, completely not as pure and flawless as it was in her previous life. However, the technology of this era was limited, and the paper produced was only at this level. However, even with this yellowish and rough paper, ordinary people still couldn't bear to use it because it was too expensive. As Corporal Song spoke and Bourgeois wrote, the content was nothing more than that he was helpless outside and there were no soldiers in the city who felt uneasy. That's why he asked his father to issue an order to recruit some soldiers to train into an army. Firstly, he could manage the local public order well, and secondly, he could resist pirates and protect the safety of the people on one side. This is what even General Lien meant. After Bourgeois finished writing, he boasted and showed it to Shisong. The latter had residual memories in his mind and knew some fonts, but it was also difficult. However, the other person was a scholar, so he couldn't be wrong. Therefore, he casually glanced at it and passed the level. It will take 2 days to get from Nanhai County to Kangwu County. It will take 2 days to get there quickly, but it will take 2 days to go back and forth. This delayed Shisong for many days, which made him a little worried. It seems that some people must try their best to finish things in the fastest time, so he waited for the Shijio to cook up. Shiji is an old fogey. He can't break the previous arrangement because of his son's words. In addition, the rules of each county have been set for several years. It is impossible to break all the rules of each county for his son's sake. Therefore, Jiang is still old and hot. He always refuses to write letters for various reasons. It didn't work for several times, which made Shisong angry. He was a foreigner. In the past, everyone called him Tiger Master. Where he was angry, he wanted to start his own business. In recent days, Bourgeois has come to the county government office frequently, and their relationship has also heated up. They all use courtesy letters to show closeness. One day, Shisong sat in the room, holding a letter he had just received, and slammed it fiercely on the desk. He angrily said, "It's been 3 or 4 times already, all with various excuses." He made it clear that he didn't agree. "Humph, forget it. Instead of wasting time, it's better for me to do it alone." Next to him, Bourgeois glanced at the letter and sighed, "No wonder the governor is doing this. It has always been like this. If you do it, you have set a precedent. If everyone in every county follows suit, then the place will be difficult to control." Shisong snorted and looked askance at him, saying, "Is it that Brother Wenkong doesn't support me in doing this?" Bourgeoisie Wenkong, after talking to Shisong these days, felt that the other party was bold and had unique ideas. He was already convinced, but his persuasion was useless. He needed the prefect Shi Shao to nod his head. He flicked the letter and sat down calmly, saying, "I believe in the abilities of adults, but the prefect also has his difficulties. If he doesn't nod, we will recruit soldiers without authorization, which is a serious crime. We need to think more carefully. This is not a joke." Shisong waved his hand. He had heard these words a lot these past few days. This kid had backed down when faced with something, and had already advised himself many times. He was getting tired of it. He immediately clapped his hands and said, "Let Zhongbo do the military, and political affairs will be left to you. As long as we act quickly and everything is done, my father can also do anything to me. Is it necessary to kill me?" At this point in the matter, there was no way back. Bourgeois had no choice but to say, "Is there a perfect way?" Shisong waved, Su Zhongbua, and Bu Wenkong listened closely, and the 3 of them sat in a circle. "How about it?" Shisong looked at the 2 of them with some pride. Su Gao thought for a moment and Bourgeois nodded, saying, "This may be feasible." He thought about this method for several days and summarized his past life experiences. The probability of success is very high, and when he heard Bourgeois agree, he felt a bit proud. However, Bourgeois still had some doubts and asked, why are you so eager to form an army? There are no wars in the counties of Nanhai County. Shisong's arrogance suddenly arose and he affirmed, I would rather make a chicken head than a phoenix tail. Su Gao and Buhua exchanged a glance and thought to themselves, this young adult has such lofty aspirations. He will definitely not be willing to leave in the future. The saying goes that the three armies do not move their provisions first, and if they want to recruit soldiers, they naturally need money. They do not have the money themselves, and the money in the county government's inventory is enough for daily expenses. If they want to make money at the fastest speed, the only way is through fraud, and the target of the fraud is the Li family, the richest man in Xinjiang. The method is also very simple. Let Buhua imitate his father's words to give orders, and ask the aristocratic families in each county to contribute money. As long as the money is in place, he believes that he can recruit soldiers in a short time. After training into an army, this matter is fine. There is also an urgent need to equip weapons, and it is difficult to move every step without money. Money brings clear skies for thousands of miles. After the matter was settled, more than 10 letters were sent to the various counties under the jurisdiction of Nanhai County. Of course, this was also to encourage the aristocratic families under the rule to contribute money and effort. The reason was simple. A new official took office with 3 fires, and whoever did not come would be dealt with. I believe that the people would not fight against the official, and they would not dare not come. This is considered a conspiracy, a blatant matter. As for what happens after coming, it depends on the mood of the newly appointed county magistrate, Shisong. The saying goes, if you want to achieve something, you must have a sharp weapon, and money is a sharp weapon. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. 100,000 Qian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One morning, Shisong sat in his room drinking tea, thinking about his future development path. A guard came to report, and the Li family servant sent an invitation. There was also a carriage waiting outside the mansion. Shisong took the invitation and chuckled to himself that the Li family could no longer sit still. Recently, there were rumors that a banquet would be held in the county magistrate's mansion, and the people invited were all wealthy families from various county towns. However, the Li family was not in the banquet, which left the Li family head confused for a while. After discussing with his younger brother, Shisong finally decided to send an invitation and let Shisong pass through the mansion. Shisong walked out of the room and felt the sunlight was particularly soft today. He stretched lazily and said to the guard beside him, "Go and invite Su Gao to come and accompany me to the Li mansion." The guard followed orders and left. Shisong left the mansion door and saw a carriage parked outside. The groom on the carriage was bored and lost in thought. Seeing Shisong come out of the mansion, he quickly gathered his energy and brought the dismounting ladder to the side of the carriage. Shisong got on the carriage and sat down, holding a letter written by Buhua a few days ago in his hand. He held the letter in his arms and patted his chest, feeling much more at ease. Everything was developing in his own direction, which was a good thing. However, at the critical moment, he was still a bit nervous. As long as the Li family wholeheartedly helped him, this letter would be the trump card. If something happened, it would be the future. I believe that at that time, I already had the ability to protect myself, and the worst thing was to move to another place. Anyway, for this place, or for the Shi family, he couldn't talk about any emotions. There is a saying that goes, if a person does not fight for themselves, heaven and earth will perish. If you want to live a good life, you naturally need to prioritize your own wealth and life. He has watched many palace dramas in his past life, especially among these wealthy families who have been scheming step by step. He doesn't even know what death is all about if he's not careful. The first thing he's doing now is how to break away from the scholar family and have his own power, which must be completely obedient to his commands. Everything he's doing now comes from distrust and lack of security. The Shi family in Jiaozhou is a behemoth, and it is difficult for external forces to shake them, but internal forces can cause this behemoth to crumble. In this lifetime, there are 2 older brothers above Shisong, and after Xie's 100 years, they will naturally take action against him. Once they do, the results can be imagined. Although he has not read history, he knows that some brothers in different dynasties have turned against each other, ultimately leading to the end of killing their brothers. This kind of thing often happens in every dynasty. And what he is doing now is just to get rid of this fate and become stronger. Su Gao arrived quickly and greeted Shisong before getting into the carriage. Along the way, Shisong closed his eyes and calmed down, but Su Gao couldn't find a word to say. The 2 of them didn't speak along the way, only the sound of the wheels. Finally, the carriage came to a slow stop. Su Gao breathed a sigh of relief and finally made it through. He felt uncomfortable all the way. As soon as the carriage stopped, he jumped out of the carriage and looked up, realizing that this was Li Mansion. He remembered what had happened a few days ago and looked thoughtful. Shisong got out of the carriage, saw him in a daze, pushed him, and walked towards the mansion. There were already servants in front of the door. Wait, busyness is a wave of bowing and leading the way ahead. Li Sun sat in the living room waiting, absent-mindedly chatting with his younger brother. Fortunately, not long after, he finally saw the figure of Shisong. He personally got up and led him into the room to sit down. Both sides exchanged pleasantries and talked about topics that were not nutritious. Li Sun saw that he was young and deep in the city, so he was so calm and had no choice but to speak first, saying, "There have been rumors recently that the county magistrate is planning to hold a banquet in the mansion, inviting influential figures from all counties in the county. In recent days, he has been busy arranging the necessary items for the banquet. I wonder if this rumor is true, sir." Shisong was a little surprised when he heard about it. He even heard about some things in his own house. Apparently he had arranged eyeliner. He smiled, took the letter out of his arms, and handed it to him. "The master is very skillful. Nothing can be hidden from you. This is my father's letter. You can read it first." A butler-like figure next to him took the letter and presented it. Li Sun took it, opened the envelope, and looked at it with 10 lines. He exclaimed in his heart, "I see. The written meaning is very simple." This matter was arranged by the prefect, and as long as Shisong instructed, he would follow it. After reading the letter, Li Sun took a reassuring pill. For this matter, he had not slept well for several nights and was worried in his heart. Because he is a businessman, there are always some unclean aspects to him. If the court wants to change people, his business in sea salt will also be ruined. If there is no sea salt business, his Li family in Nanhai County will also be in decline. A slightly powerful aristocratic family can suppress him, and his concern is not unreasonable. Now it seems that he was worried too much. He put the letter aside and smiled, saying, "The county magistrate is young and promising. Just give orders if you have anything, and the Li family will definitely do their best to help." Shisong was overjoyed and said to himself that this letter was indeed useful, but he had to put in enough effort on the surface. He quickly stood up and gave a 90-degree salute, thanking him, "Thank you very much, Master Li. My father was indeed right. Master Li is a trustworthy person." Li Sun hurriedly stood up and reached out to help, laughing, "Your Highness, you're amazing. These are all things that Li should do. Tell me, if you have anything to do, just speak up." Shisong hesitated for a moment and glanced around. Li Sun understood and sent away the servants, leaving only Su Gao, Shisong, Li Sun, and Li Cheng in the hall. It's not surprising that Li Sun was careless for a while, but because the rumors and gossip during this period made him inexplicably afraid. After reading the letter, he also wholeheartedly wanted to work for the Shi family, and never thought that the letter was fake. As he thought, as long as it was approved by the prefect, he would definitely help Shisong with all his might. The reason is that his business cannot be lost, just like management rights. Shi Xie is the boss, and Li Sun is the person with local management rights. Once this right is revoked, he will be ruined. Therefore, as long as Shisong proposes something within his ability, he has no reason to refuse. Shisong organized a speech in his heart and spoke slowly. I am the fifth youngest in my family. I was supposed to accompany my father around, but my father's orders were not to be disobeyed. When I first came here, I saw that the official road was uneven and the people's lives were suffering, and there were often refugees. The county's military was insufficient, and I was afraid that the governance of Nanhai County would be poor, which would bring shame to my father. If the court were to punish me, I would definitely not avoid one of them. Therefore, I have the audacity to ask Lord Li for some assistance, which could alleviate the urgent situation. Please agree. Li Sun was an understanding person. He knew that there was no money or food in the county government office. In previous years, he had served as the salary for the prefect on his behalf. As soon as Shisong spoke, he knew he wanted money from him. After a moment of silence, he said, "How much do you need?" Shisong didn't answer and extended a finger. Li Sun was also straightforward. Since he had agreed, he couldn't go back and said to Li Qing next to him, "Go and get 10,000 yuan to give to the county magistrate." This has solved the urgent situation. Before Li Qing could answer, Shisong hurriedly said, No, it's 100,000 yuan. 100,000 yuan. Li Sun shouted in vain, feeling that it was not appropriate. He quickly warmed up and said, "Isn't 100,000 yuan too much? Even if there is, it will take time to prepare." Li Sun's family was wealthy, but he suddenly took out 100,000 yuan, causing him some pain. He blamed himself for saying too much earlier and agreeing too quickly. Li Qing beside him hesitated to speak, and Li Sun hurriedly shook his head at him. The former sighed, as if there was no room for bargaining. Naturally, time is needed for preparation. In 5 days' time, all the other family leaders will come to the banquet. Could you please start by thanking the Li family leader first? Shisong stood up and didn't give them any room to turn around. After saying a word, he led Su Gao out of the mansion. From beginning to end, Su Gao didn't say a word, which made him very frustrated. The accompaniment was done too well. After Shisong left, Li Sun sat there dumbfounded, feeling a moment of confusion. The young master of the Shijia family was so swift and decisive in his actions that he left like this without even saying a polite word. It was only 100,000 yuan, and he suddenly covered his chest, causing a pain in his flesh. At this moment, the lower leader Li Qing shouted, "What does Shi Xie want to do? Send a child who is still wet and wet. Aren't we, the Li family, not giving him enough money in recent years? People are indeed greedy, and so much money can't fit his mouth. Humph, I'm so angry. Stop talking, the walls have ears." Li Sun regained his senses and sat in the main seat, pondering. He then picked up the letter and read it. Li Qing below shouted, "Over the years, we've been traveling south and north, and a group of brothers have worked hard for us. They've all earned us a lot of money. He's good, he's willing to ask for 100,000 yuan when he speaks, and he's not afraid of the wind. He's not going to just give him something for nothing, like feeding an unfamiliar white-eyed wolf." When he saw that Li Sun was silent, he couldn't help but get angry. He took a few steps closer and whispered, "Why don't we contact the pirates and let them do something? Do you want to die?" Li Sun was furious and got up, slapping him. He shouted, "If there is any news of this, will thousands of lives of my Li family be buried together?" Half of Li Cheng's face turned red as he shouted, "This is not enough, that is not enough. What do you think we should do?" Li Sun sat down again, pondered for a while, and said slowly, "Forget it, wait and see. We've paid, and others can't afford to pay less. Let's walk and see what their family really wants to do. I'll prepare for the next few days and send 100,000 yuan over. You can save some money for me and don't be careless with things, you know. Li Cheng, like a defeated rooster, left dejected. This matter is too abnormal. Li Sun has been the head of the family for many years, and can be said to be an old and refined person. In previous years, he offered some treasures and money to Xie at the end of the year. But now, his son asked for 100,000 yuan. He hurriedly returned to the study and compared the letters that Xie had written to him in the past, but couldn't see the reason behind it. This made him feel depressed and sighed for a while before slowly calming down. Shisong left the Li mansion in a great mood all the way. He had a windfall and earned 100,000 yuan in vain. He had already been happy and secretly thought that these aristocratic families were indeed wealthy. According to his knowledge in the past few days, ordinary people only spend 100 yuan per month and 1,000 yuan per year. This 100,000 yuan is indeed a huge sum of money, which is easy to handle. He quickly instructed Su Gao next to him, "Go back and gather all the guards. I have something to announce." Su Gao was stunned and came to his senses from their conversation just now. Oh my God, 100,000 yuan. Su Gao is also almost 30 years old, but he has never seen what 10,000 yuan looks like, let alone 100,000 yuan. He looked at Shisong with a look of admiration on his face, but he didn't expect this young master of the Shi family to be amazed. In just a few words, a letter added an extra 100,000 yuan, which was really impressive. He admired it in his heart and said loudly, "So." The two of them went back to the mansion to arrange related matters. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Buying People's Hearts. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It's midday, around 2 p.m. Originally, Xie sent 300 guards to his son Shisong to escort him to Nanhai County. According to common sense, since they had been delivered, these 300 guards could go back to recover. However, Shisong had a mind. First, he pulled Su Gao onto the boat, and then let the 300 people listen to his orders. Because Su Gao was a teacher before, these 300 people naturally listened to him. Su Gao now listens to Shisong, and these 300 people are also in his charge. It is easy to understand that the so-called, "catch the thief first, catch the king," is the truth, but it does not rule out that there are people with ulterior motives in the team, such as Xie sent eyeliner. Shisong left the Li mansion and took a carriage to the other courtyard. Although the courtyard was not large, there was a training ground specifically designed for these guards. Su Gao got off the carriage and explained a few words to one of the guards. He led Shisong to the training ground, which was not large and covered nearly 1,000 square meters. There were various training equipment inside, as well as weapons such as knives, guns, axes, and halberds on the weapon rack. At this time, there were dozens of hard-working guards doing daily training on the school ground. When Su Gao came in, they all gathered around and called out to the commander and young master. Previously it was teaching, now it is commanding. The meaning varies depending on the name. There are not many people with 300, but with proper training and utilization, one can defeat thousands of soldiers and horses. It all depends on what kind of person is commanding them. In not much time, 300 guards had already appeared on the school field. Su Gao led Shisong to a high ground, like a general's podium. Faced with the 300 people, Shisong was not nervous, just because he had led as many as 1,000 gang members before. This scene seemed to bring him back to the days when he licked blood with a knife. He took a deep breath and loudly said, "Everyone, be quiet. I have something to say. Prohibited by law. This is the first element of any army, the field is quiet, with only the voice of Shisong speaking. The training in the past few days has not been in vain, Su Gao is still very dedicated. He lowered his voice and tried his best to speak louder so that everyone behind him could hear clearly. He said, "I know that among you, there are former rangers, former prisoners, and even some farmers. It's okay, that's in the past. From today on, you will become the right arm of our scholar song." The opening line of this poem. Apart from the sound of the wind, only the voice of Shisong began to paint pancakes on the campus. He said, "I want to marry a wife, 5 concubines, 1 at night, which takes 10.5 days to come. I want a wealth of money, an endless supply of food, piled up like a mountain. I want to wear silk and feel silky like a woman's skin. In short, such an opportunity is right in front of me. As long as you believe in me, I will lead you to live like this. I don't know if you are willing or not." "We are willing, we are willing," the guards on the school field responded with a loud roar, even shouting with all their strength, whether they were sincere or not, at least they all had such thoughts. "That's great." Shisong took a few steps and approached them, slowly saying, "If you want to live like this, you have to fight and fight with the weapons in your hands. The days ahead will be long, and I believe that as long as you work hard enough, these days will not be too far away." He patted a sturdy guard beside him and asked, "What's your name?" The guard was a bit shy and lowered his head, saying, "My name is Daniel." "Daniel, as sturdy as a cow, it's great." Shisong patted his shoulder as encouragement and asked, "What are you doing as a guard for?" "I want to eat, I don't want to go hungry." The bull seemed even more shy and buried his head in his chest. "That's right, very honest." Shisong crossed over him and turned his body, shouting loudly, "To have the strength to do things, we must have enough food to eat, and we need to eat meat every 3 to 5 days. Shisong's words made them a bit incredulous. These guards seemed to be magnificent, but in fact, they were all trying to make a living. Meat was something they didn't dare to think about, or rather, it was a gift from the master's family during the Chinese New Year that allowed them to mix in some oil and water. They wouldn't even dare to think about it on a daily basis. Today, the young master who was like a white-faced scholar promised them that they could eat meat every 3 to 5 days, which made them doubt they had heard it wrong. After finishing speaking, Shisong looked at them quietly, seeing suspicion, even sneer and contempt in their eyes. Shisong knew that he needed something practical to convince this group of people. He gave Su Gao a glance, and the latter understood and ran out of the school field. They had already discussed this matter in advance, and even Su Gao couldn't believe it. This kind of treatment was something he had never seen in his life, and it was unimaginable. On the contrary, Shisong felt it was natural to take it for granted. If he wanted his subordinates to work hard for you, they naturally needed equal compensation. This is his consistent style, and it seems to be equally useful here. Not long after, Su Gao returned, followed by 2 chefs who were carrying a big fat pig bound in various colors. This caused a group of guards to start a commotion. Could it be that the young master did not deceive them? The expressions of anticipation and doubt changed on their faces, eventually evolving into a roaring roar that could express their current emotions. 2 chefs skillfully slaughtered the fat pig and started boiling water. In a little time, the boiling water froze, and pieces of pork rolled like a pot with some seasoning added. In a short period of time, it seemed like they were dreaming. It wasn't until the aroma was strong that they regained their senses. Their mouths flowed, and there was a faint inhalation sound. Hundreds of pairs of bull eyes stared at the lid of the pot, as if a naked beauty was about to appear in front of them. There was a lot of noise. Xiaotsue led a group of maidservants and servants to help and began to cook meals on the campus. For people in this age, it was really normal to eat 2 meals a day. The rich could eat some cakes and dim sum when they were hungry, or go to a wine shop to open a small kitchen, while the poor could not help but starve. For the 300 people on the campus, it was conceivable how tempting the meal was. There are many people, so it's natural to have to queue up. They are all very conscious, and no one wants to provoke the young master at this time. They have lost an unforgettable meal of meat, and they wait quietly and urgently. The strength of the crowd is great, and soon, 300 people receive their own meat and food. After a wild meal, everyone is satisfied, and there is even meat soup to warm their body. The day seems to be in a dream, and they have never even dreamed of such a scene. After about an hour, they ate, their faces shiny with oil, each hunched over and trying their best to look energetic. They began to stand in line at the schoolyard waiting for Shisong's lecture, hoping for more surprises because people are greedy and their desires have no limit. Shisong approached them and looked at them slowly as he said, "Today is the first day and also a beginning. In the future, the days will be long, and I will use my own actions to prove what I said. And you also need to use your strength to defend what you have gained today. At the same time, I also want to tell you a message. As long as you work under my Shisong's command, you will receive rewards every month, with a monthly salary of 20 yuan, a military officer of 50 yuan, and a husband of 100 yuan. Whoever performs outstandingly and has achievements, there will be other rewards. These are my conditions, and you must obey my orders. Even if you step into the mountains and seas of fire, you cannot retreat." Shrink just now, the somewhat shy bull stood up and loudly said, "I'm willing to be driven." Shisong nodded and smiled, "Very good." The rest of the people on the campus shouted loudly, "We are willing to serve our lives to the death." Ha ha ha. All right. Shisong burst out laughing, waiting for their words. The ancients valued loyalty, and he believed that what these people said was true. He said, "From now on, we will start the martial arts competition. 10 people will choose the commander of the army, and 10 people will choose the commander of the husband. Each commander will be accompanied by 2 assistants. Those with high martial arts skills will be competent. From today on, we will have 3 rounds a day, and we will never fall behind." A group of guards cheered loudly, their morale particularly high, as if even the white clouds in the sky were dispersed by their roar. The next step is very easy. Su Gao will handle some of the arrangements and prepare for the competition in the next few days. It is still unclear who will be the winner, but everyone's monthly salary and 3 meals a day are already a matter of certainty, which has made them happy for a while. Shisong believed that as long as his conditions were high enough, he did not believe that these people would still leave him and return to the cheap old man's side. In the current form, he was approaching his own ideas. In a few days, when they stabilized, he would have someone post a notice, only to have the money in place, and immediately start buying grain and wrought iron to build his own team. Of course, everything is difficult at the beginning. Some of these people are eyeliner. Those who are seemingly aloof must be kicked out as early as possible. Let Su Gao pay attention to this matter, and he can be the shopkeeper. What he did today seems to be very successful. Buying people's hearts, candies and sticks, and painting cakes to appease hunger seem to conform to common sense. It can be seen from this that the most important thing is to live. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. Guangji Grain. You are listening at novel full.audio. 3 days later, the 100,000 yuan promised by the Li family finally arrived. Taking advantage of the darkness, one carriage after another drove into the county magistrate's office, and the wheels creaked along the way. The marks behind the carriage showed that the goods loaded on the carriage were very heavy. When the last carriage entered the mansion, Shisong immediately smiled and was overjoyed. There were more than a dozen carriages, all of which were heavy copper coins. After delivering the goods, the groom drove the carriage back. They never knew what the goods were inside the carriage, and the person in charge of delivering the goods gave a death order. No one could speak up, even if they knew some insider information, they could only rot in their stomachs. Regardless of the delivery drivers, Shisong simply sent them away. After everyone left, he had the mansion door closed, personally lifted the wooden barrels from the carriage, and reached out to retrieve all the copper coins. To his knowledge, these copper coins were the common currency of the Han Dynasty and could be used in any state or county. He carefully counted them and found a total of 15 wooden barrels. He asked Buhua to count them overnight. Now, Buhua is not only a county magistrate, but also his secretary-like existence. As long as he is related to politics, his figure will appear. When Buhua and Su Gao saw so many copper coins, they exclaimed in surprise and only realized it after a while. It seemed that people with their identity might not have seen so many copper coins in their lifetime. It was normal to be shocked. Now, Buhua stayed up all night counting and dividing them. As for how to divide them, it was naturally decided by Shisong. It seemed like a lot of money, but after they had a meal together, it was not much because a large amount of copper coins were needed for food, recruitment, weapons, and equipment. From this calculation, the remaining amount was only 20.30000 yuan, which can be described as spending money like flowing water. Shisong can now be considered as overnight wealth, and his wealth cannot be revealed. He is also afraid of thieves thinking about it. Therefore, he instructed Su Gao to arrange manpower and patrol 24 hours a day and night, while he himself went back to arrange the next few days. The Li family was just the beginning, and there were more Li families to recruit. His appetite was great, and it can be said that he had no fear. A second-generation official is like this, openly making people have no chance to fight back. Shisong naturally knew the benefits of this identity, so he made a fortune, and then further strengthened his strength. The next morning, Shisong summoned Buhua and Su Gao to draft a notice and post it, not only in Xinjiang County, but also in more than 10 other county towns. Nanhai County had more than 10 county towns under its jurisdiction, with not many people, but a large area. This notice was bound to cause a sensation, because the recruited soldiers not only had food to eat, but also had a monthly salary to receive. Such a thing, there were probably only one family in the world, so the number of applicants was extremely high. Su Gao's responsibility was greater, perhaps due to his limited talent. All the soldiers recruited were trained by him, which made him too big and somewhat powerless. Fortunately, Shisong assisted on the side, and there was no trouble. After all, he had also led thousands of young men in his past life, so he still had the ability to control his subordinates. Finally, there was the purchase of provisions, weapons, and equipment. According to Shisong, infantry were meat shields, while archers were snipers who harvested their lives. After learning that about 2,000 soldiers had been recruited, he asked Su Gao to draw out 500 people to train as archers. The requirements were also very simple. Those who could shoot arrows and had a bullseye of 7 or more were admitted, and the treatment was the same as those infantry. Originally, they wanted to train about 100 cavalry, but unfortunately there were no war horses. Even if there were horses in Jiaozhou, they were short-legged horses, and he couldn't collect so many for a while. Therefore, he gave up this idea. On this day, Shisong, Su Gao, and Buhua watched the training of recruited soldiers on the school field. Due to a shortage of weapons, wooden guns were used instead, with a total of 2,500 soldiers, far exceeding the budget. However, some of the remaining elderly and weak were excluded, otherwise there would be as many as 4,000 or 5,000 soldiers. This surprised Shisong that the temptation of a monthly salary was so huge. This recruitment has tasted the sweetness for him. The issue of monthly salary needs to be promoted more vigorously, and it is best for all the states and counties in Jiaozhou to know about it. In this way, the number of recruits he recruits will be lower and lower, and the money will naturally be consumed faster. Based on 2,000 people, a person's salary of 20 months will also cost 40,000 yuan per month, which does not include the cost of equipment, weapons, and supplies. Even he himself was shocked by this calculation. If he was not in charge, he really did not know that raw materials, rice, oil, and salt were expensive. However, he was not worried about these expenses, and in a few days, someone would naturally send him money. A few days ago, there were also achievements in the martial arts competition and selection. The military commander, husband commander, and Sima have all been selected, and the most important one is the military Sima. They can command 1,000-strong army, one named Jiang Hu and the other named Gao Yuan, all of whom are outsiders. Jiang Hu is from the Lujiang River in the east of the Yangtze River, and Gao Yuan is from the Yanmen Gate in Bingzhou. This makes Shisong bandit wonder why a man from the north drifted to the south. There must be a reason behind this, but he did not delve into it deeply. After all, this is a private matter of others. If he becomes familiar with it in the future, it is impossible for others to say it themselves, and he does not need to ask himself. Jiang Hu has a dark complexion, solid muscles, and a height of only 7 feet. Judging by Shisong's eyes, he is only about 1.7 meters tall. This type of person is known for his agile skills. According to his own introduction, he is skilled in water and used to be a water thief in the Jiangdong area. In the end, he couldn't survive and came to Nanhai County. He didn't live in Qinjiang County either. He just came to try his luck when he heard that he received a monthly salary as a soldier. Unexpectedly, it was true. What's even more surprising is that after the martial arts competition, he won an official position as Sima. Although this official position was set by Shisong himself, receiving a monthly salary was not a waste of his trip. He still carries his wife and children with him, and his daily expenses are inevitable. In order to ensure that his wife and children have a full meal, he can do anything, even if he continues to be a water thief. After a brief exchange, Shisong couldn't help but feel 1,000 emotions. It was truly difficult for a hero to be defeated by a single penny, especially during the early summer when there was a shortage of resources. Calculating the harvest time, there were still 2 months left. It seems that his family was not very wealthy before, otherwise they would not have gone into the business of water thieves. The 3 of them watched the school field for an entire afternoon, and Jiang Hu and Gao Yuan did have some skills. Although there was a financial factor, the training of these new soldiers was more about their own strength. They were able to be accepted by the soldiers in a short period of time. Obviously, they had real talents and practical work, which excited Shisong. It was not that these 2 had generals or were fierce characters with a history. This was an unexpected surprise that he could not imagine. In order to look like a courteous servant, he even had the families of these 2 people move into the county government office. The latter tried to push them around for a while, but finally couldn't resist and gratefully agreed. Living in the county government office is naturally better than outside, and maidservants and maids are indispensable in daily life. As the sun set in the western mountains, a day of training quickly passed, and it was time to prepare dinner. In order to cook meals for 2,000 people, the cook was indispensable. However, these had already been arranged, so there was no need for Shisong to worry. He led the newly recruited 2 love generals back home, as if Su Gao and Bu Hua had been neglected. There are several guest rooms in the county government office, which are now occupied by some people and look lively. Jiang Hu's wife Qin Shi is playing with her son Jiang Qin, who is over 10 years old, in the small courtyard, as well as Gao Yuan's wife Xu Shi and his son. The 2 families were not familiar at first, but they lived in the same courtyard and gradually became familiar with each other. They had only been in the office for 2 days, and rarely saw the county magistrate. At this time, when they saw the county magistrate and their husband coming over, they were busy bringing their son over to salute. Speaking of which, Xu Shi saw Shisong and looked closely for a while before calling out "Ngong," leaving everyone puzzled. Shisong's heart was also strange. This was the first time she had seen this woman herself, and she had mistaken someone. How could she call herself Ngong? He immediately invited everyone inside to ease his doubts. Originally, Xu and Gao Yuan were not husband and wife, but Gao Yuan's sister.in.law. This matter can be traced back to 5 years ago. Her hometown of Yanmen was on the edge of the country, and there were often people from other ethnic groups who came to plunder the grasslands. Her husband was a border soldier and unfortunately died in a battle. Gao Yuan was her husband's younger brother, who was originally childhood sweethearts. Due to the family's arrangement, she married her own brother, but his brother died in battle, and their old relationship reignited. This kind of thing is not allowed by etiquette and law. We had no choice but to travel far away, all the way south, and finally settled down in Nanhai County. In the first 2 years, she was born. The next son's name is Gao Ping, symbolizing his peaceful growth. Upon hearing her say this, Shisong felt a sigh of relief in his heart. He was not sure if fate had caused him to hope that lovers would eventually get married. The saying, "Pingong," began to be spoken of more than 10 days ago. Shu and Gao Yuan settled here without any relatives, and they usually relied on Gao Yuan to hunt and chop wood in the mountains and forests to make a living. Although they had 2 acres of thin farmland, they naturally had no extra food under various taxes, and their lives were indeed a bit tight. Later, Gao Yuan went out hunting, and Shu entrusted her children to neighbors for care. They went to the beach alone to search for some seafood washed ashore by the waves, which was also good. She picked it up to subsidize her family, and coincidentally, someone came over to ask her to do something. The reward was 50 yuan, and she agreed without hesitation. In the end, it evolved into a dog blood plot where a woman fell into the sea and someone happened to rescue her, ultimately resulting in her unfortunate death. Shu's eloquence was average, and Lin Lin casually explained the process of the incident, which left the nearby Shisong stunned. Thinking of his first appearance here, his heart skipped a beat in admiration. He urgently asked, "Did you not get silenced in the end?" "What does silence mean?" Shu looked puzzled, and Gao Yuan beside him pondered, saying, "A few days ago, there were indeed a few people wandering around my house. I think they heard about my residence, or rather, the adults revived their lives, causing them to fail. They were unwilling to accept it, and it is not certain that they would find an opportunity to take action against my wife. Hey, it must be like this." Shisong suddenly understood. He wasn't dead, but it's okay. If he died, the Gao Yuan couple would either be silenced or blame them, and the person in charge would be safe and sound. This move of borrowing a knife to kill was really powerful. He looked at Shu Shi and asked, "But you see what those people looked like at that time?" Shu shook her head and said, "A servant-like person has arrived. He gave money and left. It's quite clever." Shisong looked regretful and reminded them, saying, "Be careful when you enter and exit. The enemy is in the dark, and we are in the bright. If something happens, it will be troublesome. We don't have to worry about food and accommodation in the mansion. It's best not to go out. Gao Yuan will arrange a few people to secretly monitor the county government. If anyone suspicious is found, they will be arrested immediately." "Yes, sir." Gao Yuan saluted and apologized. "It's all because of the greed of the lowly family, which has caused trouble for the Lord. The young master of the Shi family fell into the water and died, but later came back to life. This matter has already spread. Thinking about the cause of the incident, it is really hard to imagine." Seeing Gao Yuan feeling a bit guilty, Shisong quickly waved his hand and smiled, saying, "If you have ulterior motives, if you don't find your wife, you will also find the next person. Fortunately, I am wealthy and have not been harmed by any traitors. This matter has come to light, but the person behind it has not yet appeared." However, Shisong felt like a mirror in his heart. He saw that the atmosphere was not right, so he quickly asked his servants to prepare meals. In order to win over the 2 new love generals, they all ate together without showing any airs, giving them a feeling of finally meeting the emperor. They were deeply moved for a moment. Shisong is a person with clear grievances and grievances. It is impossible to ignore what happened to him. He did not know the story before, but now that he knows it, the mastermind behind the scenes will naturally be caught. However, he has no intention of caring about it. Let's put this matter aside for now. Once his side stabilizes, even if he digs 3 feet deep, he will still be found. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Hongmen Banquet. You are listening at novel full.audio. In ancient times, the feudal lords and nobles referred to building high walls and accumulating grain as preparation for planning major events, while Shisong's accumulation of grain was just for self-protection. After learning what Lady Gao Yuan had said, he became even more determined in his heart. Some people wanted to die on their own, although they didn't know who it was, it didn't hinder his determination to strengthen himself. Now what he needs to do is to take precautions and protect his personal safety. As long as people are alive, they have a chance to seek revenge. The enemy is in the dark, and I am in the light. If he wants to know the people behind the scenes, he naturally needs to lure snakes out of their holes. However, the timing is uncertain and the weapons are insufficient. He planned to take action with 10 feet of confidence in his heart. However, things went against his wishes. A few days later, when Gao Yuan sent people to secretly monitor the county magistrate's office, he found several strangers wandering around. Gao Yuan made a quick decision to arrest them on the spot. After questioning, he realized that it was actually his good brother who did it. This left Shisong inexplicable. Shocked, as expected, the struggles within the family have never stopped. You have not hurt the hearts of others, but they see you as a thorn in their side and make a quick decision. However, the priority now is not to settle accounts with him, but rather to have more important things to do. One day, the scorching sun hung high. In front of the county government office, there was a constant flow of people and carriages. The streets, which were originally sparsely populated, were crowded with carriages and people. Originally, it was thought that the number of people present in each county was only about 10 or 20, but unexpectedly, the number of people who arrived that day far exceeded the budget, with more than 30 people. It's no wonder that Shisong's numbers are not good. This is because the aristocratic families in each county heard that the county magistrate was hosting banquets to entertain the heads of some big families. They tried to find connections and came with them, but for no other reason. They all wanted to embrace Shisong's thigh. Apart from his position as county magistrate, what he most wanted was a prefect behind him, a big support mountain. From ancient times to the present, as long as he had some connections with the court, no matter what he didn't have many connections, and things were easier to handle. The cost was nothing more than spending money. They didn't need money, but the opportunity to establish connections with the court, so they flocked together. The team is here. The originally spacious government office was suddenly packed with thousands of servants and guards. Of course, these people could not all enter the office, and could only dine in some taverns and tea houses outside. Some people with status could only enter the office. As the number of people increased by more than 10, some seats were temporarily added, making the office, which originally had few servants, even busier. Unable to do so, the guards responsible for patrols could only help. The soldiers recruited by Shisong these days, along with the original guards, totaled more than 2,800 people, and more than 500 archers were selected from these people. The remaining 2,000 people were led by Qian. Led by Hu and Gao Yuan, the archers were handed over to Su Gao to lead. Except for the necessary patrol team in the mansion, everyone else trained on the school field. Suddenly, there were so many soldiers, and of course, the original courtyard was not enough to live in. There was no other choice but to build some wooden houses on the edge of the school field. In ancient times, building houses was very simple, such as building a homestead with wooden beams and some grass roofs. Most people lived in concrete wooden houses, and only those wealthy families could afford to live in blue bricks and tiles. In this era, most dining tables are arranged for one person, one case, and the eating method is similar to Western style. A vertical table can be arranged from front to back, and then 2 seats can be set up on the left and right sides to show that the 2 people are not ordinary. The seats can be temporarily increased, and the materials for the food are much worse. If there is no other way, one can only go to the streets, restaurants, and other places to buy them temporarily. Even if the price is higher, it is acceptable. After all, after this meal, no matter how much money is spent, there is no need for Shisong to pay for it. Therefore, all kinds of delicacies, bear paws, bird's nest, shark fin, and other top-quality wines are only served on the table, making people eat happily and applauding the county magistrate's extravagance. On the morning and in the middle of the day, wine passes through 3 rounds. On the main seat, Shisong's face turned red as he drank. This was the most time he had ever come here to drink, and he let go and drank hard. However, the wine here was like beer to him, and there were no 20 or 30 bottles that would not pour. From there, everyone, regardless of their status, as long as they were qualified to sit at the table, he smiled and made those from the small families see him. A wave of horses rushed over, all of which were massive, powerful, young and promising, and all those who didn't want money were buttoned on Shisong's head, making him feel a bit proud. In ancient times, when eating banquets, there would be dancers to entertain, which led to the habit of raising dancers in various aristocratic families and mansions. They were used to entertain, give gifts to people, and showcase the strength of the family. Therefore, in this era, the status of women was extremely low and they were mere vassals, unlike today's women who can hold up half of the sky. The county government naturally does not have any dancers, but there are civil officials and military generals. Shisong picked up a wine bottle, stood up unsteadily, and loudly said, "Everyone, please drink a full bottle. The county magistrate will act first as a tribute, drink." Looking up and taking a sip, he flipped the bottle upside down and didn't see a drop of wine falling, which drew applause. The people in the hall quickly stood up and shouted, "We respect the county magistrate." They shook the wine bottle and drank it, shouting, "Good wine." After finishing the drink, everyone sat down shaking their heads, and those who were familiar with each other began to praise each other, like a bustling vegetable market. On the lower left sat Li Sun, the head of the Li family, who was also drinking with a flushed face and shaking ears. On the lower right sat a middle-aged man surnamed Mi, who was said to be from Shuzhou and came here to do business. Coincidentally, he met the county magistrate at a banquet and paid tens of thousands of yuan to sit at the table. He was truly a wealthy businessman. Such a person was naturally welcomed and generously offered a seat. At this moment, Shisong shook a bottle of wine to the wealthy merchant Mi and smiled, saying, "Mr. Mi has just arrived. He needs to stay in Nanhai County for a few more days before he can enjoy the scenery by the sea." Mi Fushang returned the gift and drank a bottle, his mouth a bit unclear, and he said intermittently, Mi Fu is just one person. I should not be mistaken for the word, sir. There are plenty of adults. Oh, Shisong was surprised. Is this still a servant? Judging from his gorgeous attire and impressive demeanor, he doesn't just want to be a servant. Is it possible that this person has old qualifications in the Mi mansion? He was indeed a bit surprised in his heart and said, "As a natural gentleman, I casually took out 10,000 yuan. I think the Mi family is also considered a wealthy family in Shuzhou." Taking advantage of the strength of the wine, Shisong wanted to explore the bottom first. Ha ha ha. Mi Fu burst out laughing, his face full of pride, and he said, "The wealthy side is natural. The Mi family has a century-old foundation and a huge fortune of billions, which is incomparable to ordinary people. A small amount of money, even if it's a meeting gift, should not be polite to the county magistrate. Come on, continue drinking, continue drinking." Shisong laughed heartily and thought to himself, "Good guy, with billions of assets, this person's true words after drinking should not be false." Although he drank a lot, he couldn't get drunk with his alcohol tolerance. He was thinking about building a good relationship with this person and introducing him again. It was always right to fish for big fish on the long line. Therefore, he toasted frequently, and Mi Fu was no match for him. He was drunk and unconscious, lying on the table, snoring and sleeping. Shisong asked the guards to help him rest in the guest room, and he entered the theme on his own side. He gestured with his eyes to Gao Yuan, who understood and clearly had already discussed it. At this moment, Gao Yuan jumped out, his face flushed, and he hung 2 guns on his waist. He shouted, "Drinking is boring. Let me dance with a gun to cheer everyone up." Without waiting for anyone to respond, he pulled out his 2 guns from behind and started dancing, sometimes high mountains and flowing water, flashing quickly, sometimes golden and iron horses, with a murderous aura, sometimes quiet like a virgin, sometimes moving like a rabbit. Some people who were drunk were mesmerized by the sight, cheering incessantly, and some slightly sober screams were not good. There was no good banquet at the Hongmen banquet. Looking at the master's seat, Shisong, holding his chin, his eagle eyes slightly narrowed, as if he was asleep. Shisong naturally didn't fall asleep. He was pretending to be drunk, watching the movements of the group of people in the hall. A few of them saw the opportunity and wanted to urinate and run away, but didn't expect that the door of the mansion was closed, and there were guards watching from the side. It was so frustrating that they couldn't help but sigh and return to their seats. They sat like needles and felt, and every moment was a torment. Gao Yuan finished his gun dance, followed by another round of boxing and saluting before returning to his seat, attracting cheers. Some clever people had already cursed shamelessly in their hearts. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to my next words. Upon seeing Gao Yuan retreat, Shisong suddenly stood up and scanned the crowd with a pair of eagle eyes. There was no trace of drunkenness left. He said, "I am young and at the age of a weak crown, I have obtained the position of county magistrate. I feel anxious and often cannot sleep at night. However, my father has high expectations, but unfortunately, I can only comply. When I first came here, I hope everyone can take good care of me." A group of people below heard this and shouted loudly, young and promising, they all started to pat their horses. Some people remained silent and watched the change, looking at what he wanted to do. At this moment, the Li brothers seemed to have known what Taoist Song wanted to do, just eating and drinking there, with a look of schadenfreude. Shisong pressed down with his hand, and after a moment of silence, he said, "Nanhai County is located in a remote area. Although it has the benefits of sea salt, it cannot support the people of the county. Pirates often appear, and the people suffer unbearably. Shisong is not talented. Since he sits in the position of county magistrate, he naturally wants to benefit the people of the area. However, his power is ultimately limited. Therefore, I hope everyone can help us. Nanhai County is in a state of great waste and needs to be revitalized. In the future, there will naturally be a place for everyone on the list of achievements. I also hope that everyone can generously contribute." A group of people were stunned upon hearing this. It was not a banquet, it was a request for them to pay for it. But now they finally understood the purpose of the banquet. However, it was too late, and their hearts were filled with regret, which was of no use. Suddenly, the entire hall fell silent and needles could be heard. Shisong saw that they flipped their faces faster than they flipped through books, and his face suddenly turned cold. Just now, the literati were in a passionate mood, but now there was no sound. He probably didn't want to spend money or contribute, but it's okay. Since he dared to set up a game, he naturally had full confidence. He looked at Li Sun and gestured for him to lead the way. Li Sun originally thought he hadn't seen it. A few days ago, he had already given him 100,000 yuan to make his flesh ache for a while. It seemed like he was going to bleed again today. Li Qing next to him suddenly exhaled like a cow, and was about to have a fit when his brother stopped him. Li Sun stood up with a calm expression and said, "Nanhai County is full of waste waiting to be revived. We have been living here for generations, so it is reasonable for us to contribute. Therefore, Li should take a head first. There are several pearls and agates, 20,000 stones of grain, and 10,000 yuan. Li Sun took the lead in providing money and effort, and the rest of the people could only suffer this mute loss. Some paid a few thousand yuan, some paid a few thousand stones of grain, and even some paid a few hundred stones of grain to get by. Sitting above, Shisong became more and more angry as he listened and sent the beggar away. As a result, his face gradually turned cold, and he let out a sigh. The rest of them were shocked, but there was no sound for a moment. These indigenous people cannot see reality clearly. It's good, they can only issue the final ultimatum. Shisong looked at Buhua, who was still watching the play. The latter seemed to be aware and turned to face Shisong with a gloomy face. In his heart, he was shocked and quickly took out a roll of white cloth from his arms, with dense and numb words on it. He cleared his throat, stood up, and read aloud with the cloth roll. Yang County, Qian family, 10,000 acres of land, 500 doormen, 200 clan members, who have been selling refined iron, grain. Shu County, Wang family, more than 6,000 acres of good land, 300 tenants, and 200 servants for generations. There are over 700 disciples who have been selling antiques, pearls, herbs, and more than 100 members of the clan for generations. They are from Qingxian, Guangji, 1,000 acres of grassland, and nearly 1,000 servants. They have been selling horses, cattle, and sheep for generations, with more than 2,000 caravans and 10 members of the clan. Originally from the Guanyi area, they have frequently traveled to Jingxiang to sell horses in recent years. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.